Have you ever wondered what makes people capable of creating changes that impact their lives and the world around them? What is their way of thinking, their mentality, their patterns, their perceptions of the world, their reactions to different life events? What influences them? My name is Cristina Pujol, and I invite you to join me in this adventure where we will explore together the mind of change makers.
A few days back, I struck up a conversation with a stranger, delving into the nuances of each individual's perceptions and viewpoints, influenced by our upbringing, the sociocultural context, and environmental factors, and how they greatly affect our way of thinking and acting. One of her stories, which I'll share with you today because it's priceless, made me reflect on the significance of our perception, perspective, and the underlying frame of reference guiding our actions. It underscored the profound impact these elements have on our lives and relationships with others. And it also made me reflect on the ongoing tendency to pass judgment both on others and ourselves. I'll share the story with you a little later, but for now, let me just go a little deeper into what we understand by perception, perspective, and frame of reference. I actually talk about the frame of reference in episode number 68, and I recommend that if you haven't listened to it, don't miss that episode. Now, perception is derived from the Latin perceptio, meaning to gather, to receive. And it encompasses the intricate process through which individuals organize, identify, and interpret sensory information to comprehend and represent the surrounding environment. Perception is not only the passive reception of these signals, but is also shaped by the learning, memory, expectations, and attention of the receiver. Perception refers to the process by which we interpret and organize the sensory information of the world around us. It's how we make sense of what we see, what we hear, what we smell, taste, and touch. Perception is a physiological and psychological process in which the brain and senses work together to create a mental representation of the world. The domain of perception has long been the subject of extensive scholarly inquiry with a plethora of studies dedicated to unraveling its complexities. This ongoing exploration is fueled by persistent debates surrounding the extent of our predictive capacities and the mechanism underlying perceptual processes. What is confirmed by several scientific studies, including those by researchers at the Donders Institute of Radboud University and the Max Planck Institute of Psycholinguistics, is that our brain functions a bit like the predictive text and autocorrect functions of your mobile phone. Your brain is constantly trying to guess the next word when you listen, read, or have a conversation. Essentially, our brains are constantly making predictions at different levels, from meaning and grammar to specific phonetic elements. And if you experience like me, that sometimes predictions and autocorrections don't make sense or get you into real trouble, at least that has happened to me. We already have the first filter that tints the information with a very personal color. Let's put it that way. So our cognitive processes may occasionally steer us astray or introduce a subjective tint to incoming information. Now, perspective refers to how a person sees and understands the world. Is how each of us interpret and give meaning to the information we receive through our senses, experiences, and culture. Perspective is from where we see things, which sometimes affects us to the point of determining what we're seeing. In other words, we're adding another filter to our perception. And several things can significantly impact our perspective or point of view. And some of the most important are life experiences. Our personal experiences can have a great impact on our perspective. Positive experiences can lead us to be optimistic, while negative ones can make us more pessimistic. For example, someone who has just experienced a big loss, like a job, may have a different perspective on finding another job than someone who already has a job or just got the job of their dreams. Culture. the culture in which we grow and develop can also have a great impact on our perspective. Cultural beliefs, values, and norms can influence how we see the world and how we relate to others. For example, in some cultures, family and community are very important, while in others, the individual has greater priority. And we don't need to move to another country to see this. In the same country, there are many cultural differences, at least in mine, in Spain. Education, that's a third one. Our education can also impact our perspective. Formal education and exposure to different ideas and perspectives can broaden our understanding of the world and help us develop a broader perspective. The media such as television, social media, newspapers, radio, can influence our perspective by presenting us with certain ideas and narratives. Depending on the source and quality of the information, the perspective we adopt may be more or less objective. And today, as, for example, social media aims to reinforce what we believe in, they're causing more polarization in society in some contexts. And another one is the social interactions. The social interactions we have with other people can also impact our perspective. Close relationships, friends, and family can influence our perspective by sharing their own experiences and opinions because those opinions have value to us. In summary, our life experiences, culture, education, media, and social interactions are some of the most important factors that impact our perspective and point of view. Each person has a unique and individual perspective that may be different from others. And being aware of these factors mentioned above can help us be more aware of our own biases and predispositions and can make us more open to new ideas and experiences that may help us broaden our understanding of the world and of others. The perspective from which we see things has a great impact on our perception of reality and how we relate to others. And why is this so important? Well, often we tend to believe that things are the way they are, the way that we see them from our own experience and point of view, from our own lens, from our own filters, which can limit our ability to understand the perspective of others and to see beyond our own limitations. And it can also limit us in our communication with others. Perspective can also change over time and with experience. As a person acquires new experiences and knowledge, their perspective can broaden and change, and sometimes it doesn't change for the better. So in summary, perception and perspective are intrinsically linked constructs that play pivotal roles in shaping our cognition and behavior. It is a lens through which we see and understand the world. Now, perspective and frame of reference are related concepts, but they're not the same. Frame of reference is a broader concept that refers in social psychology to the set of assumptions, beliefs, and values that shape how we see and interpret the world. It's how we judge ideas, actions, and experiences. It is our comparison pattern to make sense of everything around us. A frame of reference can often limit or distort perception, as in the case of biases and stereotypes. It is the context we use to make sense of our experiences. Our frame of reference is influenced by a variety of factors such as culture, upbringing, education, and life experiences. So in essence, perception refers to the process of interpreting sensory information. Perspective denotes the individual's unique way of comprehending the world, and the frame of reference provides a broader context that shapes perception and perspective. So while perception and perspective are closely intertwined, the frame of reference acts as the overarching framework influencing how we perceive and make sense of our experiences. Our frame of reference provides the context for our perception, influencing what we pay attention to, how we interpret sensory information, and what meaning we derive from it. Now, after all this theory, let me tell you the story of this girl named Ana and what she shared with me. Ana used to live in Venezuela. She's in Spain now. And as you may or you may not know, Venezuela has a situation that it isn't very secure for everyone living there, or most of the people living there. It's rather quite unsafe. And she was telling me how in Venezuela it is so unsafe that when you're talking with someone on the street, when you're having a conversation on the street, each parties are always looking behind the other person's shoulder. So each person is kind of protecting the other person. So when two people are talking, one is looking over the other shoulder to see what's happening behind. And if something seems off, well, there's always someone looking over their shoulder, being alert. So everyone is in constant alert. When they walk, they're checking reflection in the mirrors or on any glass surface to see what's happening around them. They're always on alert. And it's not the only country where this happens. In many countries, this is the sad situation. Fortunately, there are other countries, for example in Europe, where you can live with a much lower level of constant alert. The thing is, one particular day, she had to go to downtown Caracas, capital of Venezuela, to a very unsafe area where normally people there always have to take everything off, meaning they leave everything at home, like watches, jewelry, because if you don't, someone else will take it from you. She had to go downtown to run some errands, and she had to take the metro, public transportation, and that is where it is the easiest to get robbed, whether it's by someone snatching it, threatening you, or whatever. They usually go in groups, but sometimes they can also rob alone. The thing is, she went downtown Caracas and supposedly she took everything off. Her dear Rolex watch, her earrings, her necklace, and only carried with her a small purse. When she got to the metro, she found a seat and sat down and started, of course, paying attention to everything that was happening around her, keeping the alert to a maximum. And then she noticed, there it was. There was a man holding on to the central bar in the train, and she could see his watch, and she realized that it was a Rolex. Her Rolex, her watch. This was the Rolex that she had been given when she was 15 as a quinceañera gift, which is something very important in Latin America. And she always wore it, except when she was going downtown Caracas. She looked at it again and again, and it was her beloved Rolex. And she looked at her wrist, and she didn't have her Rolex. She must have forgotten to take it off at home. And the man over there had it, and he was blandly showing it off. Gathering courage like a brave woman, she searched her purse and found she had a pen. And that's all she had that could resemble a weapon. So she summoned up courage and said to herself, I'm going to pretend this is like a gun. I'm going to stick it to him like a gun, and I'm going to tell him to give me the Rolex. Trembling and sweating, she waited until they were close to the next metro station, and then she stood up and quickly turned to the guy, put the pen on the man's back, and said, give me the Rolex right now. The man turned white. He got all nervous. Yes. He gave her the Rolex, and she grabbed it and ran off. She was shaken, but extremely happy. She ran as fast as she could away from that train station, but she was so proud of herself, feeling like a great heroine. She had just rescued her own Rolex that had been stolen in public transportation. She went home all happy. She told everyone, her father, all proud that she had managed to recover her Rolex all by herself. But the reaction of her father was not what she expected. Her father yelled at her, all mad. Are you crazy? How could you? You should not have done that. Those people don't work alone. Surely there was someone else watching. That thief seems dumb because normally they would have confronted you. They would have run after you. They would have hit you. I don't know. Anything could have happened. But how could you? If you get robbed, don't do that again. Don't go after the thief. Leave the thief alone. After that, she was so disappointed. But anyway, she felt that she had stolen from a thief and she had recovered her own Rolex. So she kept on all happy. She told her mother, she told everyone, and then she went home. And then she got to her room. And in her room, on her dresser, was, I think you guessed it, her Rolex, which she had cleverly left there that morning before going to downtown Caracas. So she wouldn't go downtown Caracas with the Rolex and be stolen. And she had just stolen the Rolex from a complete stranger. She threw herself on the floor, started crying. She felt awful for what she had just done. Because that couldn't be. I mean, she was all proud that she had recovered her Rolex. And in reality, what she had done is just steal from another person. Steal the Rolex from a stranger. And she started thinking how to return it, how to find this person. How could she do that? She had to do charity work. She had to do something to apologize to the man. She started praying. She started asking for forgiveness. And now, how was she going to tell her father? If her father had just scolded her for having the Rolex, for having saved her own Rolex, and now, how could she tell him that she has been the one who had committed a robbery? So she decided not to tell absolutely anyone. She only told one other person who was a trusted friend who lived with them in their house and who actually asked her, please give it to me. But this is a hilarious story, of course, not for that man. Have you ever heard Tony Robbins say, what's the difference between the dog bit Charlie and Charlie bit the dog? It totally sounds like that. This story is incredible. And it's incredible also because there's so many things we can learn from it. First, how when you change your perspective, the whole story changes completely. Can you imagine the perspective of that man who, instead of being a thief who had just robbed a woman, was a poor man who was on the metro, probably returning from work, and suddenly a woman with a weapon, because he didn't know it was a pen, who probably thought it was a knife, stick it to his back, asking for his watch, and poor thing gave it to her, all scared, instead of being the thief that Anna thought it was. In this woman's story, there's a total change in perspective where the victim becomes the perpetrator. It's important to recognize that the perception we have of a situation is not always the objective reality, and that our own emotions and experiences can bias our interpretation of the facts. That's why it's essential to review our perspective, keep an open mind, and be willing to listen to others' perspectives. Ask ourselves questions like, what else could this mean? What am I not taking into account? Sometimes the moment in our life doesn't allow us to ask those questions, or to ask the right questions, or to connect with others in a different way, or the way we want to. Maybe because we have to think in milliseconds, like Anna, or whatever other reason. But if we can at another time, or if we can at that moment, it gives us the opportunity to open up and connect with others in a different way. This story also made me reflect on not judging so much, not seeing everything in black and white, being able to forgive ourselves, and knowing that in everything we do the best we can at that moment with information, interpretation, and frame of reference we have. It's not about going to the other extreme and ignoring the harm we can cause. No. If we have caused harm and it can be repaired, it's our responsibility to repair it, mitigate the harm, and apologize. And if there's no possible reparation, at least apologize and forgive ourselves. Changing perspective can be a challenging process, but it can also be very rewarding. I share with you some suggestions to help you broaden your perspective. Open your mind to new ideas. Being willing to consider new perspectives is the first step in changing or broadening your own perspective. Listen to others and try to understand their point of view. Learn from different cultures and ways of thinking. This will give you a wide variety of experiences and tools to evaluate and change your own perspective. Ask questions. Ask questions and challenge your assumptions. Often, our perspectives are based on assumptions that are not necessarily based on facts. Try to ask questions and challenge those assumptions. Is this really true? Can this have other meanings? What other meanings could it have? Also examine your own experiences and how they have influenced or are influencing your perspective. You may have learned to see the world in a certain way, or you have learned to see the world in a certain way because of your experiences. So reflect on how some of those experiences have influenced you and they're getting you maybe too biased. What you can learn also from them and change your perspective. Seek new experiences. Try new things and broaden your horizons. This will give you the opportunity to see the world from a different perspective. For example, read books on topics you have never considered before. Participate in an activity you've never tried before. Traveling is great for this. Always when we go with an open mind, which is point 1, and it's point 1 for a reason. Point number 5, practice critical thinking. Question everything around you. Or question things around you. You don't have to question everything, but question your thoughts and do not accept information passively. Question what information you get. Seek evidence and verify information before forming an opinion. This will help you evaluate information more objectively and change your perspective more effectively. Take into consideration all sides. Over time, these habits can help you broaden your perspective and see the world in a different and more enriching way. In summary, it's important to maintain an open-minded perspective and not judge too quickly, remembering that each of us is doing the best we can at that moment with information and tools that we have. We can always continue working on ourselves and our relationship with others, even when circumstances are not ideal. It's important to remember that excessive self-judgment can be harmful to our mental and emotional health. Instead of judging ourselves harshly, we should treat ourselves with kindness, compassion, and acceptance. It is important to recognize our strengths and weaknesses, but without being too critical or negative toward ourselves. Practicing self-compassion and self-acceptance can help us cultivate a more positive and loving attitude towards ourselves and others. And I leave you with 2 quotes. Our awareness, our ideas, our frame of reference, and our belief system determine whether we go to the river of life with a teaspoon, a cup, a bucket, or a barrel. Robert Anthony. Sanity is simply what is found within the frame of reference of conventional thinking. Eric Fromm. Thank you for this shared time. Thank you for listening to this podcast. And since many of you have shared with me that you want to support this podcast, we have an account on Patreon where you can support it at 3 levels. The link is always in the episode notes. This will help us to keep growing. And to support this podcast at no cost, subscribe to any or all of the platforms of your choice, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Audible, Google Podcasts, and you can also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and 5 stars if you think we deserve it. A huge hug and kisses to you, Change Maker.